The coffee cup shattered against the floor, ceramic shards scattering like shrapnel as the stranger's hand clamped around Lena's wrist. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed, his breath hot against her ear. Across the diner, a quiet black man with kind eyes set down his fork, whispered something to his little girl, and stood up, not like a hero, but like someone who'd made this choice 1,000 times before. What happened next would take 15 seconds. What it would reveal would change 3 lives forever. If you're watching from your city anywhere in the world, drop a comment below and hit that like button. I want to see how far this story travels. How many of you understand what it means when an ordinary man becomes the only thing standing between chaos and the people he loves? Stay with me until the end. This one's worth it. The October morning came to Riverdale the way it always did. Soft, unassuming, painted in watercolor shades of rust and gold. Lena Harper stood on the sidewalk outside Maggie's diner, her hands wrapped around a travel mug that had gone lukewarm during the drive from her new apartment. She'd been in town for exactly 11 days, and this was the 4th morning she'd stood in this exact spot, trying to convince herself to go inside. Chicago had nearly killed her. Not literally, though. The panic attacks in the middle of design presentations had felt close enough. But in the way a city can hollow you out when you've given it everything and gotten back only noise, deadlines, and the kind of loneliness that thrives in crowds. She'd been a rising star once, the designer everyone wanted, the woman whose concepts made clients weep with gratitude. Then the burnout hit like a freight train, and suddenly she couldn't sketch a straight line without her hands shaking. Riverdale was supposed to be a reset. Population 4,200. 1 main street, 3 churches, 2 bars, and a diner that allegedly served the best apple pie in the state. Lena had rented a furnished studio above the hardware store, subletting it from a woman who'd moved to Florida and didn't ask questions as long as the check cleared. The plan was simple: breathe, heal, figure out who she was when she wasn't drowning. The bell above Maggie's door chimed as she finally stepped inside. The diner smelled like coffee, bacon grease, and decades of comfort food. Red vinyl booths lined the windows, their surfaces worn smooth by generations of elbows and coffee mugs. A long counter ran the length of the room, chrome stools bolted to the black and white checkered floor. Morning lights slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes that drifted like lazy snow. Lena slid into a booth near the back, away from the clusters of farmers and retirees who occupied the room with the ease of people who'd claimed these same seats for 30 years. A waitress appeared almost immediately, mid-50s, name tag reading Barb, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Coffee, hun? Please." Barb poured without comment, the stream dark and steady. "Menus on the table, but I'll save you time. Get the Denver omelet. Cook's in a good mood, and Frank only makes those right when he's happy." Lena managed a small smile. Denver omelet. Got it. As Barb walked away, Lena let her gaze drift across the room. That's when she first saw them. Booth by the window facing the street, a man and a little girl, their heads bent together over a plate of pancakes. The girl was maybe 6, deep brown skin and dark curls in tight, springy coils, talking with the kind of enthusiasm that made her whole body move. She gestured with sticky hands, eyes bright, voice animated. The man listened with complete attention, occasionally wiping syrup from her chin with a napkin, his expression soft in a way that made Lena's chest ache. He looked like someone who'd been carved from something harder than most people and then sanded down by love. Broad shoulders, strong hands, dark brown hands that looked built for work. An unpolished kind of handsome that didn't rely on symmetry, but on the weight of lived experience. Maybe mid-30s. His hair was a short, grown-out curl pattern, a little unkempt like he'd been too busy to get it lined up recently. Flannel shirt rolled to the elbows. He wore fatherhood the way some men wore expensive watches, like it was the most important thing he owned. The little girl said something that made him laugh, the sound low and genuine, and for a moment Lena forgot about her cooling coffee. Then the door chimed again. 2 men entered and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. They weren't local. Lena could tell that immediately. Too sharp, too urban. their clothes wrong for a farming town on a Wednesday morning. Dark jeans, leather jackets, eyes that moved across the room with practiced assessment. They took a booth near the counter, but something about their positioning felt deliberate, strategic. Lena's omelet arrived. She ate mechanically, trying to ignore the prickle of unease crawling up her spine. This was paranoia, she told herself. Burnout residue. Not everyone was a threat just because they didn't fit the postcard. She was wrong. 15 minutes later, as Lena was finishing her second cup of coffee, one of the men stood and walked directly toward her booth. He moved with the kind of casual confidence that set off every alarm bell she'd learned to trust in Chicago. The walk of someone who knew he had power and enjoyed using it. He slid into the seat across from her without asking. Lena Harper. Not a question. A statement. Her heart kicked against her ribs. I think you have the wrong person. I don't think I do. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and she caught a whiff of cologne mixed with something sharper. Adrenaline, maybe, or anticipation. You've been hard to find. Thought you'd go west. Maybe California. Didn't expect middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. I don't know what you're talking about. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Marcus sends his regards. The name hit her like cold water. Marcus Vance, her former client. The tech CEO whose company she designed a headquarters for before she discovered he was using the building plans to hide financial crimes. Shell companies operating out of floors that didn't officially exist. She'd gone to the FBI, testified, put him away for 15 years. The trial had been 8 months ago. She'd been promised protection, then told the threat level was minimal once sentencing was complete. Apparently, someone had different ideas about minimal. He's in prison, Lena said, keeping her voice steady through sheer force of will. He has friends who aren't? The second man appeared beside the booth, blocking her exit. Lena's breath came faster, her vision tunneling. The diner continued around them, conversations, clattering dishes, someone laughing at the counter. But none of it felt real anymore. We're going to walk outside, the first man said quietly. You're going to come with us. You make a scene, people get hurt. You understand? She understood. She also understood that going with them meant she'd never walk back through that door. Her hand moved towards her purse, toward the phone buried inside. But the second man's grip closed around her wrist, hard, bruising, the kind of hold designed to remind you exactly how fragile your bones were. Don't, he said. That's when the coffee cup fell. Lena's hand spasmed, reflex and fear, and the ceramic mug toppled off the table. It hit the floor with a sharp crack, shattering into a dozen pieces, coffee spreading in a dark pool across the checkerboard tile. The sound cut through the ambient noise like a gunshot. Half the diner turned to look, including the man by the window. Lena watched him clock the situation in approximately 2 seconds. Her face, their positions, the hand on her wrist. She saw something shift in his expression. Not anger, not even surprise. Just a decision being made with the kind of cold efficiency that comes from muscle memory. He said something to his daughter, too quiet for Lena to hear, and the little girl immediately scooted deeper into the booth, her eyes going wide but obedient. Then he stood, movements unhurried, and walked towards them. Not fast, not aggressive, just steady, purposeful, like a man crossing the room to ask about the weather. Morning, he said, his voice carrying a hint of rural Pennsylvania, friendly but neutral. Everything okay here? The man gripping Lena's wrist didn't let go. Private conversation, move along. Seems like the lady dropped her coffee. He nodded toward the mess on the floor, then met Lena's eyes. The question in his gaze was clear. Do you need help? She nodded once, tiny, desperate. His attention shifted back to the two men, and something in his posture changed. Nothing obvious, just a subtle redistribution of weight, a settling of his shoulders. I think you should let her go. I think you should mind your business. Can't do that. The first man stood, anger flashing across his face. Listen, hero. He didn't get to finish. What happened next took 15 seconds, maybe less. Lena would replay it in her mind 1,000 times later, trying to parse the mechanics. But in the moment, it was just blur and precision. The man from the window moved. Not wild, not theatrical, economical, controlled, each action flowing into the next like water. He caught the wrist of the man holding Lena and twisted. Some kind of lock that made the guy's grip release instantly, a yelp of pain escaping his throat. Simultaneously, he swept the man's legs, put him on the ground hard enough that the impact vibrated through the floorboards. The second man lunged, reaching for something under his jacket, but he never cleared leather. The protector, because that's what he was, Lena realized, that's exactly what he was, intercepted the motion, delivered a sharp strike to the solar plexus that folded the man like paper, followed by a controlled takedown that left him gasping on the floor beside his companion. No shouting, no unnecessary force, just absolute surgical control. The entire diner had gone silent. The man stood between Lena and the two on the ground, breathing steady, his flannel shirt barely rumpled. He pulled his phone from his pocket with one hand, keeping his attention on the men. "Sheriff, this is Darius Carter. Got a situation at Maggie's. 2 men just tried to force a woman to leave against her will. You'll want to send a car." A pause. "Yeah, they're contained. I'll wait." He ended the call and finally looked at Lena again. "You hurt?" She shook her head, mute, still trying to process what she'd just witnessed. "Good." He glanced toward the window booth, where his daughter was watching with huge eyes. He gave her a small nod. "I'm okay." And some of the tension left the child's shoulders. Barb appeared with a broom and dustpan, stepping around the tableau with the weary efficiency of someone who'd seen stranger things. "Darius Carter, you and violence have got a complicated relationship." "Not looking for it, Barb. Never are." She started sweeping up the ceramic shards. "Sheriff's 3 minutes out. You two want to give statements. You'll be here a while." The man on the floor, the one who'd grabbed Lena, groaned and tried to sit up. Darius's boot came down gently but firmly on his shoulder, pressing him back down. Not brutal, just final. "Stay put," Darius said quietly. "Ambulance is coming too. You hit that floor pretty hard." You broke my wrist." "You sprained, maybe fractured, definitely not broken." Darius's tone was factual, clinical. "You'll heal." Lena found her voice, thin and shaky. Who are you?" He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something complicated there. Weariness, resignation, the look of a man who'd hoped to leave a particular version of himself in the past. "Darius Carter," he said. "That's Nia over there. We come here for pancakes on Wednesdays." "That's not what I meant." "I know." Before she could press, the door burst open and Sheriff Tom Hayward barreled in. 60 years old and built like a retired linebacker, his uniform straining across his chest. He took in the scene, 2 men on the floor, Darius standing over them, Lena white-faced in the booth, and sighed. "Darius again? Not my fault. Trouble finds me, Tom." "It's never your fault." The sheriff knelt beside the men, checking them with practiced hands. "Either of you need immediate medical?" "My wrist, yeah." Tom pulled his radio. "Dispatch, send EMS to Maggie's. Non-critical." He looked up at Darius. "They armed." One tried to reach for something, right jacket pocket. Tom retrieved a compact 9mm from the indicated pocket. His expression darkened. "Concealed carry in my county without local permits. That's a felony." He glared at the 2 men. "You boys just made a very bad day worse." The next hour passed in a blur of statements, questions, and cold coffee. The EMTs arrived and took the man with the fractured wrist to the county hospital under police escort. The other was cuffed and placed in Tom's cruiser. Lena explained about Marcus Vance, the trial, the threats she'd received and reported. Tom's jaw tightened with every sentence. "Our FBI should have told us you were here," he said. "Witness protection doesn't just end because the trial's over. I wasn't officially in protection. They said I'd be fine." They said wrong." Tom closed his notebook. "I'm assigning a patrol to check on you at least for the next few days. You see anyone else unfamiliar, you call me immediately, understood?" Lena nodded, exhaustion crashing over her. When Tom finally released her, Darius was still there, sitting in the booth with Nia, who was working her way through a coloring book with intense concentration. He looked up as Lena approached. "You okay to get home?" he asked. "I think so." "Your hands are shaking." She looked down. He was right. Delayed reaction. Nia looked up from her coloring, her eyes enormous and earnest. "Daddy says when you're scared, you should take deep breaths and count to 10. It helps." Something about the child's sincerity broke through Lena's shock. She managed a small smile. "That's good advice." "I get scared sometimes too," Nia confided. "Like when there's thunder, but Daddy always makes it okay." Darius's expression softened as he looked at his daughter, something private flickering across his features before he smoothed it away. Nia, why don't you clean up your crayons? We should let Lena Harper, we should let Miss Harper get going. She's had a rough morning. But Lena didn't move. She looked at Darius, really looked at him, and tried to reconcile the gentle father with the man who dropped 2 attackers in 15 seconds. Thank you, she said quietly. If I hadn't been here, someone else would have stepped in. I don't think that's true. His gaze held hers for a long moment. Something unspoken passing between them, recognition maybe, or understanding. The look of 2 people who'd both learned the world could be cruel, and that sometimes all you could do was stand between the cruelty and the people who deserved better. Get some rest, he said finally, and take the sheriff's advice, be careful. Lena left the diner in a daze, the October sunlight feeling surreal after the dimness inside. She made it to her car before the shaking got worse, before the tears came, and she sat in the driver's seat for 10 full minutes, just breathing, just trying to convince her body that she was safe. Through the diner window, she could see Darius helping Nia into her jacket. The 2 of them moved with the easy synchronization of a team that had been together through everything. The girl said something and Darius smiled, ruffling her hair. And Lena felt something shift in her chest. Gratitude, yes, but also curiosity. Who was Darius Carter? And why did a man who moved like a trained operator spend his Wednesday mornings eating pancakes with his daughter in a town where nothing ever happened? She started her car and drove back to her apartment, but the questions followed her like shadows. The next 3 days passed quietly. Sheriff Hayward was true to his word. Patrol cars rolled past Lena's building every few hours, and one of the deputies, a young woman named Rita, stopped by to check on her twice. The man with the fractured wrist was released from the hospital into federal custody. His partner talked immediately, confirming what Lena had suspected. Marcus Vance had put out word from prison, and certain people had taken it as a contract. But they're small time, Tom explained when he called with the update. Vance's real connections are being investigated. FBI is involved now. You're on their radar again, which means protection if you want it. Lena thought about returning to Chicago, to safe houses and federal agents, to the life of looking over her shoulder in cities that never slept. Then she thought about the quiet of Riverdale, the way morning light looked on Main Street, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could build something here that felt like peace. I want to stay, she said. Then we'll keep an eye out, Tom promised. This town takes care of its own. She wasn't sure she qualified as its own yet, but she appreciated the sentiment. On Saturday morning, Lena woke early and decided to risk Maggie's again. The diner was busier on weekends, filled with families and the post-church crowd, and she told herself the anonymity of numbers would be comforting. She was wrong about the anonymity. The moment she walked in, conversations paused, heads turned. Barb appeared with coffee before Lena even sat down. Denver? The waitress asked. How you remember? Hun, this whole town knows your order now. Also knows what happened Wednesday. You're famous. I'd rather not be. Barb patted her shoulder. Give it a week. Someone's cow will get loose on Route 9 and you'll be old news. Lena slid into a booth, hyper aware of the attention, but it faded quickly as people returned to their meals and conversations. She was halfway through her omelet when the bell chimed and Darius walked in, Naya bouncing beside him. The girl spotted Lena immediately and waved with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of childhood. Darius followed her gaze, and something shifted in his expression. Not quite surprise, more like resigned acceptance. Nia was already pulling him toward Lena's booth. Hi, Nia beamed. You're the lady Daddy helped. Are you okay now? Daddy said you were very brave. Lena blinked, caught off guard by the direct assault of 6-year-old charm. Yes, I'm okay, thank you. I'm Nia, this is my dad. He helps people sometimes, but he doesn't like to talk about it much. She said it matter-of-factly, like reporting the weather. Darius had the expression of a man watching his cover get blown by the person he loved most. Naya, we should let Miss Harper eat in peace. But I want to sit with her, she seems nice. That's not... It's fine, Lena heard herself say. Really, if you don't mind the company. Darius hesitated, clearly torn between politeness and whatever instinct made him want to maintain distance. As a black single dad in his 30s in a small town, he carried himself like he'd learned to read rooms twice. Once for what people said and once for what they meant. But Nia was already scrambling into the booth opposite Lena, leaving her father little choice but to follow. They settled in, Nia chattering immediately about the book she'd finished, the turtle she'd seen by the creek, the fact that her best friend Emma had lost a tooth and the tooth fairy had brought $3 whole. Darius listened with patient attention, interjecting occasional questions, but Lena caught him glancing at her with something like apology. "She's not usually this forward," he said quietly when Nia paused to breathe. "I don't mind, it's nice actually, feels normal." "Normal's good." Barb arrived with menus and a knowing smile. Well, well, Darius Carter socializing, mark it in the calendar. "We're being friendly, Barb." "That's what I said. Socializing." She winked at Lena. "He's been a hermit for 2 years. You're good for him." "Barb, I'll give you a minute with those menus." She vanished toward the kitchen, leaving awkward silence in her wake. Nia, oblivious to adult tension, studied Lena with open curiosity. "Do you live here now, in Riverdale?" "I do. Just moved here a couple weeks ago." "From where?" "Chicago." "That's a big city. Daddy says big cities are loud. Is that true?" Lena smiled. "Very loud. That's part of why I left." "Do you like it here?" The question was simple, but it hit deeper than the girl probably intended. Lena thought about the quiet mornings, the way people nodded hello on the street, the strange comfort of a place where everyone knew everyone's business, but also seemed to genuinely care. "I think I do," she said. "I think I like it a lot." Nia nodded seriously. "Good, because this is the best town. We have a creek and a library, and Maggie makes the best hot chocolate in winter with the tiny marshmallows." "Sounds perfect." Darius was quiet through this exchange, but when Lena glanced at him, she caught something soft in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close, like he was seeing his daughter through someone else's eyes and being reminded why he'd chosen this life. They ordered pancakes for Nia, French toast for Darius, more coffee for Lena, and the conversation flowed easier than it had any right to. Nia filled the spaces where adult awkwardness might have lived, her 6-year-old logic providing bridges between strangers. But gradually, carefully, Lena and Darius began to talk. "Sheriff said they arrested both men," Darius mentioned. "Federal charges." "Yeah. Apparently, the FBI takes threats against witnesses more seriously when there's actual violence." "You testified against someone." It wasn't quite a question, but Lena answered anyway. "My former client. He was using my architectural designs to commit fraud. I found out, reported it. He didn't take it well." Darius absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. "That took courage." "Or stupidity. The lines blur sometimes." No." His voice was firm. "Courage. Doing the right thing when it costs you something, that's the definition." There was weight behind the words, like he was speaking from experience. Lena wanted to ask about it, about the skills he'd displayed, about what kind of Wednesday morning pancake Dad moved like special forces. But Nia was watching them both with bright, interested eyes, and some instinct told Lena that questions like that weren't for public consumption. "What do you do?" she asked instead. "For work. Carpentry, mostly. Custom furniture, home repairs, whatever people need. Keeps me busy." "Oh, you made my bed," Nia announced proudly. "It has shelves for books and a reading light and everything." "Sounds impressive." Darius shrugged. "Keeps my hands occupied." The food arrived and they ate in comfortable silence, punctuated by Nia's running commentary on pancake construction techniques. Lena found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't since arriving in Riverdale, the simple domesticity of the moment wrapping around her like a blanket. When they finished, Darius insisted on paying for Lena's meal despite her protests. "You had a rough week," he said simply. "Let someone do something nice." She didn't have energy to argue. Outside, the October morning had warmed into something golden and perfect. Nia skipped ahead toward Darius's truck, an older model Ford, well-maintained, with a car seat visible in the back, while the adults lingered on the sidewalk. "Thank you again," Lena said. "For Wednesday, for today, for not making this weird." Darius's mouth quirked. Nia doesn't really allow weird. She operates on a different frequency. She's wonderful. Something complicated crossed his face. Pride and pain tangled together. "She is. Best thing I ever did." Before Lena could respond, Nia called from the truck. "Daddy, can we go to the creek, please?" Darius glanced at Lena, a question in his eyes that he didn't voice. She found herself answering it anyway. I should let you two get to your day. Relief and disappointment flickered across his features simultaneously. Right, of course. He started to turn, then paused. If you need anything, if you see anything suspicious, call the sheriff. Or, well, I'm in the phone book under Carter. I will, thank you. She watched them drive away, Nia waving enthusiastically from her car seat, and felt the stirring of something she couldn't quite name. Not attraction exactly, though Darius was undeniably handsome in his quiet, unassuming way. Something more complicated. Recognition, maybe. The sense that they were both people rebuilding lives from pieces, trying to construct something stable from the rubble of whatever had come before. Lena walked back to her apartment, the October sun warm on her shoulders, and for the first time since leaving Chicago, she felt something very close to hope. She didn't know, couldn't have known, that hope was about to get tested in ways she couldn't imagine. The following week unfolded with the strange rhythm of a life finding its footing. Lena spent her days setting up a small home office in her studio apartment, reaching out to former colleagues who might need freelance design work, and taking long walks through Riverdale's quiet streets. The town revealed itself slowly. The used bookstore run by a retired English teacher, the farmer's market on Thursday afternoons, the way everyone seemed to know everyone else's grandmother. She kept running into Darius and Nia. Not intentionally, at least not at first, but Riverdale was small enough that paths crossed with surprising frequency. Tuesday at the library, where Nia was checking out a stack of books about dinosaurs, and Darius was quietly reading a thriller in the corner. Thursday at the farmer's market, where Nia insisted on introducing Lena to the woman who sold honey and explaining in elaborate detail why clover honey was superior to wildflower. Saturday morning at Maggie's again, which was apparently their weekly tradition. Each encounter felt natural, unforced, like the town itself was conspiring to weave their lives together in small, ordinary ways. It was during the third Saturday breakfast that things shifted. Lena had started arriving at Maggie's earlier, partly because the morning light was better for sketching, and partly because she'd learned that Darius and Nia usually showed up around 8:30. She told herself this wasn't intentional, that she just appreciated the routine, but she also found herself glancing toward the door more often than the sketch pad in front of her. When they walked in, Nia spotted her immediately and broke into a run. Lena, guess what?" Darius followed at a more measured pace, carrying a backpack and wearing an expression of fond resignation. "Inside voice, Nia." The girl skidded to a stop beside Lena's booth, vibrating with excitement. "I lost a tooth. Look." She opened her mouth wide, revealing a gap in her bottom row. "That's wonderful," Lena said, genuinely charmed. "Did the tooth fairy come?" $5. Emma only got 3, but Daddy says the tooth fairy adjusts for inflation. Darius had reached the booth by then, shaking his head. The tooth fairy's financial policies are not up for discussion. "Can we sit with Lena, please?" He looked at Lena, that same careful question in his eyes. She'd learned to read it by now. The hesitation of a man who valued privacy, who'd built walls around himself and his daughter, but who was finding those walls inconvenient when his 6-year-old had decided someone was worth knowing. "Please do," Lena said, moving her sketchpad aside. They settled in with the ease of practice now, Nia chattering about her week, while Darius ordered their usual. But when the food arrived and Nia became absorbed in drowning her pancakes in syrup, Darius turned his attention fully to Lena. You're drawing," he observed, nodding toward her sketchpad. I'm an architect." She hesitated. "Or I was. I was trying to figure out if I still am." "Can I see?" She hesitated, then slid the pad across the table. He studied her sketches, preliminary concepts for a small community center. Nothing serious, just her hands remembering what they knew, with genuine attention. "These are good," he said finally. "Really good. The way you've integrated the natural light, the flow between spaces, it feels organic." Lena blinked. "You know architecture?" "I know craftsmanship, same principles, different scale." He traced a line with his finger. "This beam here, you're thinking structural and aesthetic simultaneously. That's rare." "You sound like you've done more than furniture." Something shuddered in his expression, quick and practiced. "I've done a lot of things. Carpentry is what I do now." It was a door closing, polite but firm. Lena recognized the boundary and respected it, even as her curiosity deepened. Everyone in Riverdale had a story. She'd learned that much. The question was whether they wanted to share it. Nia, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, piped up around a mouthful of pancake. Daddy built our whole house. Well, not the whole thing, Darius said, but I fixed everything. It was really broken when we moved in, Nia added. Now it's perfect. Where's your house? Lena asked. Oak Street, Nia said promptly, the blue one with the big maple tree in front. Darius's voice was neutral, but there was something beneath it. Pride, maybe, or the satisfaction of a man who'd built something with his own hands. I'd love to see it sometime, Lena said before she could second guess it. Professional curiosity. Nia bounced in her seat, syrup forgotten. Yes, you should come over. We could show you Daddy's workshop and my room in the treehouse. Nia, please, Daddy. Lena's our friend now, Nia said, like it was settled law. Friends visit. Darius looked caught between a rock and a hard place. His daughter's enthusiasm on one side and his carefully maintained privacy on the other. But something in Lena's expression must have reassured him, because after a long moment, he nodded slowly. If you're interested, you're welcome to stop by. Fair warning, it's a work in progress. Aren't we all? Lena said softly. Their eyes met across the table and something unspoken passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the acknowledgement that they were both people carrying weight they didn't talk about. Barb appeared to refill coffee, took one look at the three of them, and smiled in that knowing way that made Darius sigh. Don't start. Barb didn't say a word. You're thinking it loud enough, Darius muttered. The waitress just winked at Lena and walked away humming. After breakfast, they stood outside in the cool morning air. Nia was already running toward the truck, her energy apparently infinite, while Darius lingered on the sidewalk with Lena. She likes you, he said quietly. Nia doesn't usually warm up to people this fast. She's easy to like. Still, it means something. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable with whatever he was about to say. Her mom died 2 years ago. Cancer. It was hard. She's been cautious around new people since then. Lena's chest tightened. Darius, I'm so sorry. We're managing, some days better than others. He glanced toward Naya, who was making faces at them through the truck window. But she's right about one thing. You're welcome at the house. Tomorrow afternoon if you want. I'm building a bookshelf for the library and Nia is supposed to be helping, which means she'll mostly be talking and handing me the wrong tools. You could keep her company, see some actual craftsmanship. I'd like that. 2 o'clock, bring coffee if you're smart. I only keep the terrible instant kind. Lena laughed, surprised by the sound. Deal. She watched them drive away, Nia's hand waving wildly from the window, and felt that hope from last week settling deeper into her bones. Maybe Riverdale was exactly what she'd needed. Maybe rebuilding a life wasn't about running from the past, but about finding people who understood that everyone carried scars, and some of them never fully healed. The next afternoon, Lena stood outside a blue craftsman house with white trim and a sprawling maple tree that had to be at least 50 years old. The porch looked new or newly repaired, the wood still showing fresh grain, the steps solid beneath her feet. She knocked, holding a carrier with 2 large coffees from the only decent cafe in town. Nia answered, still in church clothes, but with grass stains already decorating her knees. You came. Hi, Nia. Daddy's in the workshop out back. Come on. She grabbed Lena's free hand and pulled her through the house. Lena got impressions of warmth and care. Hardwood floors refinished to a honey glow, built-in shelves overflowing with books and toys, a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and looked lived in without being messy. Photographs lined the hallway, and Lena caught glimpses of Nia at various ages. Darius smiling with his arm around a beautiful black woman with kind eyes, the 3 of them on a beach somewhere warm, brown skin glowing in sunlight, the image framed like a promise. The workshop was a converted garage filled with the smell of sawdust and wood stain. Darius stood at a workbench, running a hand plane across a board with smooth, practiced strokes. He looked up when they entered, sawdust in his hair, and something about the scene, the domestic simplicity of it, the competence in his hands, made Lena's breath catch. You brought coffee, he said, setting down the plane. You're officially my favorite person. I was already her favorite person, Nia announced. Now you have to share. Fair point. He took the cup Lena offered, sipped, and closed his eyes. God, that's good. I've been drinking motor oil all morning. Daddy says bad words when he hits his thumb with the hammer, Nia confided, but only quiet bad words. Nia, it's true. Lena laughed, setting her own coffee aside. So, this is the famous workshop. This is it? Darius gestured around the space. Tools hanging in precise order, half-finished projects in various corners, a radio playing classic rock at low volume. Nothing fancy, but it gets the job done. It's incredible. And it was. Lena could see the care in every detail, the way someone who understood materials had organized the space for maximum efficiency. You built all this? Renovated. The bones were here. I just made them functional. He showed her the bookshelf he was working on, a beautiful piece in cherry wood with adjustable shelves and decorative corbels that looked like something from a high-end catalog. His hands moved over the wood as he explained the joinery, the finish he planned to use, and Lena found herself mesmerized, not just by the craftsmanship, but by the way he talked about it. There was passion there, buried under the quiet exterior. A man who found meaning in creating things that would last. After approximately 10 minutes of watching adults discuss wood grain, announced she was going to play in the treehouse and would someone please come get her when there were snacks. 30 minutes, Darius called after her. Then homework. I already did my homework. Then reading time. A distant groan floated back, followed by the sound of a ladder being climbed. Alone in the workshop, the atmosphere shifted slightly. Darius returned to planing the board, and Lena watched, appreciating the rhythm of his work. After a few minutes of comfortable silence, she ventured the question that had been building since Wednesday. Where did you learn to fight like that? His hands stilled. He didn't look up. What makes you think I learned? Darius, come on. What you did in the diner, that wasn't bar fight instinct. That was training. He set down the plane carefully, precisely, then finally met her eyes. I was in the Marines 8 years, did some specialized work towards the end. When I got out, I wanted to be someone different. Someone who built things instead of... He trailed off. Instead of what? Lena asked quietly. Instead of breaking them. The weight in those words settled between them. Lena thought about the way he'd moved. The control, the absence of anger, even in the middle of violence. Not a man who enjoyed fighting. A man who'd learned to be very, very good at it and had spent the years since trying to put that part of himself away. Does it work? She asked softly. Being someone different. Most days. He picked up the plane again, but didn't use it, just held it like an anchor. Nia helps. She doesn't know that version of me, doesn't need to. I'm just Dad. The guy who makes pancakes and builds tree houses and can't ever remember which American Girl doll is which. A small smile crossed his face. But yeah, most days I'm just a carpenter in a small town. Then, something like Wednesday happens, Lena said, and the muscle memory kicks in. He nodded, the honesty in it bare. I remember that you don't ever really stop being what the Marines made you. You just manage it better. Lena understood that more than he probably realized. I testified against Marcus Vance because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't, she said, even knowing what it would cost. The career damage, the threats, the fear. I had to be someone who did the right thing even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That's the difference between you and most people, Darius said. Or the difference between survival and principle, Lena murmured. The line's thinner than we pretend. Darius studied her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more fragile, I think. Someone who needed protecting. He shook his head. But you're not fragile. You're just tired. The accuracy of that statement hit like a physical thing. Lena felt her throat tighten. Very tired. Then maybe you came to the right place. He gestured toward the workshop, the house beyond, the tree where Nia's laughter drifted down. Riverdale's good for tired. Not much happens here. People mostly leave you alone to heal until trouble walks into Maggie's. That was an anomaly, Lena said. Was it? She added after a beat. Or is trouble something that finds people like us, no matter where we go? Darius didn't have an answer for that, or if he did, he kept it to himself. Instead, he picked up the plane and returned to work. The rhythmic whisper of wood shavings curling onto the floor. Lena watched for a while, then moved to examine the other projects in various states of completion. A rocking chair, a dining table with inlay work, a small chest with dovetail joints so precise they look machine cut. You're really talented, she said. This could sell in galleries. Don't need galleries. I sell to people who need furniture. But you could... I know what I could do, Lena. His voice was gentle but firm. I chose this. Simple work, simple life, time with my daughter, that's enough. She heard what he wasn't saying, that he'd had enough of complexity, of high stakes, of the kind of life that demanded everything and gave back mostly scars. She understood that intimately. They worked in comfortable silence after that, Darius shaping wood, while Lena sketched ideas for small renovations to her apartment. When Nia eventually climbed down from the treehouse demanding snacks and attention in equal measure, they migrated to the kitchen. Darius produced apple slices and peanut butter with the practiced ease of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Nia launched into an elaborate story about the squirrel family that lived in the maple tree. And the baby squirrel. His name is Steve. He's learning to jump, but he's not very good yet. And he fell on his bottom, and it was so funny. How do you know his name is Steve? Lena asked, delighted. I asked him, Nia said, like it was obvious. Obviously, Darius echoed, hiding a smile behind his coffee cup. The afternoon stretched into early evening, the October light going golden through the windows. Lena helped Nia with her reading homework, a story about a girl who wanted to be an astronaut, while Darius started dinner, moving around the kitchen with quiet efficiency. There was something deeply peaceful about it all, the ordinary domestic rhythm, the lack of pretense. When Lena finally said she should go, Nia's face fell. But you just got here. I've been here 4 hours, sweetheart. That's not very long. Darius ruffled his daughter's hair. Lena has her own life, Nia. We can't keep her prisoner. But I like when she's here. Nia struggled for words, her 6-year-old vocabulary not quite sufficient for what she was trying to express. It feels like more, like our family's bigger. The statement hung in the air, achingly honest. Darius's expression crumpled slightly. Pain and love tangled together, and Lena felt her own eyes sting. This child who'd lost her mother was opening her heart with the fearless generosity only children possessed, not knowing how terrifying that was for the adults watching. I like being here too, Lena said softly, crouching to Nia's level, and I'll come back if that's okay with your dad. You're welcome anytime, Darius said, his voice rough. Really? Lena stood, collected her things, and let Darius walk her to the door. They stood on the porch, the evening air cool and carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Thank you, Lena said, for today, for letting me in. Darius paused, searching for words. For not making this complicated, for just being present. Nia needs that, people who show up and stay. So do you, Lena said before she could stop herself. He smiled, small but genuine. Maybe, I'm out of practice. We could practice together, Lena said, the words carrying more weight than she'd intended. Showing up, staying. For a moment, Darius looked almost vulnerable, the careful walls showing cracks. Then he nodded, accepting what she was offering. Friendship, connection, the possibility of building something new from the pieces of their broken lives. I'd like that, he said. Lena drove home through the darkening streets, Riverdale's windows glowing warm against the autumn twilight, and felt something settle in her chest. Not quite belonging, that would take time. But the first stirrings of it, the sense that maybe, just maybe, she'd found a place where her jagged edges could fit alongside someone else's, where being tired and scarred and still trying was enough. She didn't see the car parked across from her building, didn't notice the figure watching from the shadows, making note of her arrival time, her routines, the patterns of her new life. The threat wasn't over, it had only been waiting. The unease started small, the way these things always do. A sense of being watched that Lena attributed to residual paranoia from Chicago. A car she swore she'd seen twice in different parts of town, though she couldn't remember the make or model well enough to be certain. The feeling of eyes on her back when she walked home from the library. She told herself she was imagining things. Riverdale was safe. Sheriff Hayward had said the threat was contained. Marcus Vance's associates were either in custody or had backed off once they realized federal attention was focused on them. But on Thursday evening, 2 weeks after that Sunday at Darius's house, Lena found a note tucked under her apartment door. No envelope, just a folded piece of paper with 5 words written in block letters. We know where you are. Her hands shook as she stared at it, the paper trembling like a leaf. She should call the sheriff. She should call someone. Instead, she found herself dialing the number Darius had given her weeks ago, the one she'd programmed into her phone but never used. He answered on the second ring. "Lena, everything okay?" Her voice cracked. "I found a note under my door. It says they know where I am." Silence on the other end, but she could hear the quality of it change. Darius's attention sharpening to a point. "Where are you right now?" "My apartment above the hardware store." "Lock your door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Tom Hayward. I'm calling the sheriff now, then I'm coming over." "Darius, you don't have to." "Lena." The line went dead. She did as instructed, throwing the deadbolt and the chain, then stood in the middle of her small studio, clutching her phone and trying to remember how to breathe. The note sat on her kitchen counter, innocuous paper carrying malicious intent, and she couldn't stop staring at it. 15 minutes later, heavy footsteps sounded on the stairs outside. A firm knock. "Lena, it's Darius." She opened the door to find him standing there in jeans and a flannel shirt, his hair slightly mussed, concern etched across his features. Behind him on the street, she could see his truck parked at an angle, like he'd pulled over in a hurry. "Where's Nia?" she asked immediately. "With my neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She watches her sometimes when I have evening work." He stepped inside, his eyes already scanning the apartment, the windows, the fire escape, the sight lines. "Show me the note." Lena handed it over. Darius studied it without touching it, his jaw tightening. Same paper as standard printer stock. Block letters, all caps, meant to avoid handwriting identification. Professional enough to be concerning. He looked up at her. "You called Tom. You said you were calling him." "I did. He's on his way." Darius moved to the window, checking the street below. "How long have you felt like something was off?" "A few days, maybe a week. I thought I was being paranoid." "Paranoia keeps people alive." His tone was matter of fact, not unkind. "What specifically made you nervous?" "A car I kept seeing, feeling watched. Nothing concrete." "Description of the car." "Dark sedan, I think. I'm not sure." Darius pulled out his phone and made a call. "Tom, it's Darius. When you get to Lena's building, look for a dark sedan. Possibly been circling the area for the past week. Might still be around." He listened, then nodded. "Yeah, I'm with her now. She's secure." Another pause. "Understood. See you in 5." He ended the call and turned back to Lena, his expression softer. "How are you holding up?" "I'm terrified," she admitted, hating how small her voice sounded. "I came here to get away from this. I thought I was safe." "Hey." Darius crossed to her, his hands settling gently on her shoulders. "Look at me. You're safe." "This is a scare tactic, someone trying to rattle you. It's working, which means they're winning, and I need you to not let them win. Can you do that?" She nodded, drawing strength from his steadiness. "I can try. That's all anyone can do." Sheriff Hayward arrived with a deputy and the small apartment filled with official presence. Tom bagged the note as evidence, took Lena's statement, and confirmed that a dark blue sedan had been spotted near the building earlier that day by one of his patrols. "We ran the plates," Tom said. "Rental car out of Pittsburgh. Rented to a name that doesn't exist. Fake ID, stolen credit card, professional operation." "So, Vance's people are still active," Darius said flatly. "Looks like, but they're getting sloppy, leaving notes instead of acting." "That tells me they're trying to force you out of hiding, Lena. Make you panic and run, probably into a less secure situation." "What do I do?" Tom exchanged a look with Darius, some silent communication passing between them. "You don't stay here alone tonight. This building's got too many access points, and I can't spare an officer for 24-hour protection. I can go to a hotel." "Hotels have records, credit card trails. If these people are as connected as they seem, they'll find you." Tom sighed, rubbing his face. You need to stay somewhere off the books. Somewhere they wouldn't think to look." "She can stay at my place," Darius said. Lena's head whipped toward him. "Darius, no. I can't put you and Nia at risk." "You're not putting us at risk. I am." His voice was steady. "My house is secure. I know how to handle threats, and frankly, if they want to come after you there, they're going to have a very bad time." He's not wrong," Tom added. "Darius's place is defensible. He's got training, and nobody would expect you to be there. It's a good short-term solution while we track down this sedan and figure out who's pulling the strings." Lena looked between them, feeling cornered by logic and care in equal measure. "This is insane." "Welcome to my world," Darius said dryly. "Pack a bag. Enough for a few days." 20 minutes later, Lena was in Darius's truck with a hastily packed duffel, watching Riverdale's quiet streets slide past the windows. Darius drove with calm focus, his eyes checking mirrors more frequently than normal, taking an indirect route that she suspected was meant to identify any tale. "Does Nia know?" Lena asked. "I called Mrs. Chen from your apartment, told her we have a guest staying over, asked her to explain to Nia that you needed a safe place for a little while. She's good with that kind of thing. Lost her husband to violence years ago, understands threat assessment." "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For bringing this into your life. You and Nia have been through enough." Darius's hands tightened on the wheel. "Lena, you didn't bring anything. Bad people made bad choices, and you're dealing with the consequences of doing the right thing. That's not your fault." "It feels like my fault." "I know, but it's not." They pulled into his driveway, the house dark except for the porch light Mrs. Chen had left on. Darius killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the night. "So, protocol," he said quietly. "I go in first, check the house, then signal you. If I don't signal within 2 minutes, you drive to the sheriff's office. Keys are in the ignition." "Darius, this is non-negotiable. 2 minutes." He was out of the truck before she could argue, moving toward the house with that same controlled efficiency she'd seen at the diner. He disappeared inside, and Lena counted seconds, her heart hammering. At 90 seconds, the porch light flicked off and on twice. "All clear." She grabbed her duffel and hurried inside. The house felt different at night, more intimate somehow. Darius had turned on a few lamps, casting warm pools of light across the living room. Nia was asleep upstairs. Lena could hear the faint sound of a white noise machine, and Mrs. Chen had left a note on the kitchen counter about dinner in the fridge, and bedtime going smoothly. "Guest room's upstairs," Darius said, taking her duffel. "First door on the right, bathrooms across the hall. You need anything at all. My room's at the end of the hall, and I'm a light sleeper." "Thank you," Lena said, meaning it more deeply than the words could convey. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps." But rest didn't come easily. Lena lay in the guest room bed, staring at unfamiliar ceiling shadows, and tried not to think about the note or the sedan, or the fact that Marcus Vance's reach apparently extended further than anyone had anticipated. She must have dozed eventually because she woke to voices downstairs. Adult voices, tense and quiet. The clock read 2:17 a.m. Lena crept to the door and opened it carefully. Darius's voice drifted up the stairs, and another she recognized as Sheriff Hayward's. "Found the sedan abandoned near the county line," Tom was saying. "Wiped clean, but we got partials from the door handle, running them now." "Any movement near the house?" Darius asked. "Negative. I've got a unit doing irregular passes, trying not to be obvious about it. As far as we can tell, nobody knows she's here." "Good. Let's keep it that way." Then Tom's tone shifted. "Darius, you need to understand what you're signing up for. If Vance's people figure out she's with you, then they'll come here." "I'll handle it." "I've handled worse, Tom." A pause. "I know you have," Tom said. "That's not what worries me." "What does?" "That you'll handle it the way you used to. And there's a 6-year-old girl upstairs who needs her father in one piece, not in prison for excessive force." Lena heard Darius exhale long and slow. "I know my limits," he said. "I know what I can't afford to be anymore." "Just making sure." The sound of footsteps, Tom preparing to leave. "I'll update you when we get the fingerprint results. Meanwhile, keep your head down and your eyes open." The front door opened and closed. Lena heard Darius locking it, the deadbolt sliding home, then his footsteps coming up the stairs. She should have ducked back into the guest room, pretended she hadn't been listening, but something kept her frozen in the doorway. Darius spotted her when he reached the landing. "Can't sleep?" Heard voices. Wanted to make sure everything was okay. Tom had an update. They found the car, but no suspects yet. He studied her face in the dim hallway light. You look exhausted." "So do you." "I'm used to it. Too many years of irregular sleep schedules." He leaned against the wall, and Lena noticed for the first time that he was wearing a shoulder holster over his t-shirt, a compact pistol secured against his ribs. He caught her looking and grimaced. "Precaution. I don't usually carry at home, but circumstances being what they are." "I understand." Do you?" The question was gentle, curious. "Most people would be freaking out. You're remarkably calm." "I spent 8 months dealing with threats during the trial," Lena said. "Federal marshals, safe houses, constant vigilance. I learned to compartmentalize or I'd have lost my mind." She wrapped her arms around herself. But I'm not calm, Darius. I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it now. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, empathy, the look of someone who understood that particular skill intimately. Come downstairs, he said. I'll make tea, or something stronger if you prefer. They ended up in his kitchen, mugs of chamomile steaming between them, sitting at the table where she'd watched Nia do homework weeks ago. The house settled around them, creaking softly the way old houses do, and outside the windows, Riverdale slept on, oblivious to the small drama unfolding in the blue house on Oak Street. Can I ask you something? Lena said after a long silence. Sure. When Tom said you'd handled worse, what did he mean? Darius turned his mug in slow circles, considering his answer. I was part of a special operations unit. We did things that don't make it into official reports in places that officially we were never deployed. High-risk extractions, counterterrorism, hostage rescue, good work, necessary work, but the kind that leaves marks. Is that why you left? Partly. Mostly it was Alicia, my wife. His voice softened, and the name landed like a heartbeat. She got diagnosed while I was overseas, and by the time I made it home for the emergency leave, the cancer was already stage 4. Lena's chest tightened. I had a choice, Darius continued. Stay in and let the Marines be my whole life, or get out and spend whatever time she had left actually being present. He met Lena's eyes. What? I got out. We had 8 months together before she died. 8 months of being a husband and father instead of a weapon. He swallowed. Best decision I ever made. Lena's throat closed. I'm so sorry. Me too, but I don't regret it. His gaze drifted upward, towards the ceiling, toward the rooms where Nia slept. Nia got to know her mom, really know her, and Alicia got to see me be the man she married instead of the one the military turned me into. That matters. You're still that man, Lena said softly. The one she married. Darius smiled, sad and small. I'm trying to be. Most days I succeed. But the other part's still there, Lena. The training, the instincts, the capacity for violence. I keep it locked down for Naya's sake, for my own sake. But it doesn't go away. Wednesday at the diner proved that. You protected me. I hurt people who were trying to hurt you worse. Lena reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. Assault? There's a difference between violence for its own sake and violence in defense of others. You know that sometimes the line feels thinner than it should. They sat like that for a while, hands touching, steam rising from forgotten tea. Two broken people trying to convince each other that healing was possible. Eventually, Darius's phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Fingerprints matched a known associate of Vance's organization, Darius said, reading the message. Warrants being issued, manhunt underway. They're closing in, he added. Tom's confident they'll have this wrapped up in 48 hours. And if they don't, then we adapt. He looked at her, steady as a promise. But you're safe here, Lena. I promise you that. She wanted to believe him. She went back to bed wanting to believe him. But sleep remained elusive. And around 4 a.m., she heard Nia's door open. Small footsteps padding down the hall. They paused outside the guest room, and Lena held her breath, waiting. A soft knock. Lena, are you awake? She opened the door to find Nia in princess pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong? I had a bad dream. Nia's voice was small in the hallway darkness. Sometimes I sleep with Daddy when I have bad dreams, she whispered. But I heard talking earlier, and I thought, maybe you were having bad dreams too. She said it with the earnest logic of childhood, like shared nightmares were something that could be solved with company. Lena's heart cracked open. Want to come in? Nia climbed into the guest bed without hesitation, burrowing under the covers with her rabbit. Lena settled beside her, and the girl's small, warm presence was instantly comforting. What was your bad dream about? Lena asked softly. My mom, Nia whispered. Sometimes I dream that I'm forgetting what she looked like, and that's scary. Do you have bad dreams? Nia asked. Sometimes. About what? Lena considered lying, offering some sanitized version. But Nia deserved honesty, the kind of honesty that didn't make the world bigger and scarier than it already was, but didn't insult her intelligence either. About people who want to hurt me, Lena said quietly. About being scared and not knowing how to make it stop. That sounds worse than my dreams. Maybe, but we both woke up and we're both safe now. That's what matters. Nia was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she snuggled closer. Daddy says when you're scared, it helps to be near people who love you. That's why I sleep with him sometimes. The casual use of love, the way only children could deploy it without self-consciousness, made Lena's eyes sting. Your dad's very smart. He is, Nia murmured, already drifting. And he really likes you. I can tell. How can you tell? He smiles more when you're here, Nia said, barely awake. Real smiles, not the sad ones he does when he thinks I'm not looking. Lena stroked the girl's hair, soft coils under her fingers, and felt something settle in her chest. Whatever happened with the threats, with Marcus Vance's people, with the uncertainty of her future, this moment mattered. This small person trusting her in the dark, this house that had opened its doors, this man downstairs keeping watch while they slept. She didn't hear Darius check on them an hour later. Didn't see him pause in the doorway at the sight of his daughter curled against Lena, both of them finally peaceful. Didn't catch the expression that crossed his face, tender and terrified in equal measure. The look of a man realizing his carefully controlled life was about to get complicated in ways he couldn't predict or prevent. Morning came gray and threatening rain. Lena woke to find Nia gone, voices and breakfast smells drifting up from the kitchen. She showered quickly and came downstairs to organize chaos, Darius making pancakes while Nia set the table, both of them moving in practiced synchronization. She stayed with you last night, Darius said without preamble. Hope that was okay. More than okay. We both needed it. Bad dreams, Nia announced, pouring orange juice with intense concentration. But they're better when you share them. They ate breakfast like a family, and Lena tried not to think about how dangerous that comfort was. How much it would hurt when this temporary arrangement ended. Darius's phone buzzed twice during the meal. Updates from Tom that he read but didn't share, keeping the darkness outside their small bubble of normal. After breakfast, Darius declared it a workshop day. Nia needs normal routine, and I've got that bookshelf to finish. You can sketch, read, whatever you need. Just stay inside, away from windows when possible. The day unfolded with strange domestic ease. Lena sat at the kitchen table with her sketch pad, while Darius and Nia worked in the shop, their laughter drifting through the open door. Around noon, Mrs. Chen stopped by with soup and motherly concern, clucking over Lena like a worried hen and extracting a promise that she'd eat properly. But the peace shattered at 3:47 p.m. when Darius's phone rang with Tom's number. Lena watched his face change as he listened, watched the former Marine surface in his posture, his jaw. When? Darius asked. How sure are you? A pause. I see. No, we're secure. I'll handle it. He ended the call and looked at Lena, and she knew before he spoke that the situation had escalated. They identified the man who left the note, Darius said. His name's Derek Cole, and he's got a history with Vance's organization. Enforcement, intimidation, 2 suspected murders they could never prove. Lena's stomach dropped. Tom's team missed him by 20 minutes at a motel outside town. He's still here, looks like. Darius glanced towards the workshop where Nia was singing to herself. Tom thinks he's going to make a move soon. Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Then maybe I should leave, Lena said quickly. Go somewhere else. Lead them away from you and Nia. No. The word was flat, absolute. That's exactly what they want. You isolated, vulnerable, easier to grab. You stay here where I can protect you. Darius, I've got a security system I never bothered activating, he said, already moving. Motion sensors, cameras, the whole setup. It's getting turned on tonight. Tom's putting extra patrols in the area, and I'm going to teach you how to use a pistol, because if worst comes to worst, you need to know how to defend yourself. The rest of the afternoon passed in intense preparation. Darius activated his security system, apparently installed years ago but never used, and walked Lena through the alert protocols. He checked every window lock, every door, mapped out safe positions in the house, and escape routes if needed. Then, after Nia was settled with a movie in the living room, he took Lena to the basement. The shooting range was basic: sandbags, a target board, soundproofing that looked military grade. Darius produced a compact 9mm and proceeded to teach her the fundamentals with patient precision. Stance, grip, sight picture, trigger control. It's not about being Rambo, he said. It's about giving yourself options if you absolutely need them. His hands adjusted her grip. his body close behind hers as he walked her through the mechanics. Aim center mass. Don't shoot unless your life depends on it, but if it does, don't hesitate. Lena fired 3 rounds, the recoil jarring through her arms, her ears ringing despite the protection. All 3 hit the target, grouped loosely around the center. Good, Darius said. Natural steadiness. Do it again. By the time they came back upstairs, dusk was settling and Lena's hands smelled like gun oil and cordite. Nia had fallen asleep on the couch, the movie still playing, and Darius carried her upstairs to bed with the gentle care that never failed to make Lena's heart ache. He came back down to find Lena standing at the living room window, staring out at the darkening street. Don't backlight yourself, he said quietly, pulling her away from the glass. Makes you a target. Is this what your life was like before? Lena asked. Sometimes, mostly it was worse. How did you stand it? Darius was quiet for a long moment. I had a mission, a purpose, and I knew that when it was over, I could come home to Alicia, and eventually Nia, and they made the darkness worth walking through. He turned Lena to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You've got people now, too. Tom, me, even Naya in her way. You're not alone in this. I don't want to get you hurt. I'm harder to hurt than you think. The storm that had been threatening all day finally broke, rain lashing against the windows in horizontal sheets. Thunder rumbled and the lights flickered once, twice, then held. Darius's security system chimed softly. Perimeter sensors active, all access points secure. They ate a quiet dinner, cleaned up together, and settled into an evening routine that felt surreal under the circumstances. Around 9, Darius's phone buzzed with another update from Tom. No sign of Cole, but his rental car had been spotted near the highway, suggesting he might be leaving the area. Or he wants us to think he's leaving, Darius said grimly. At 10, Lena excused herself to get ready for bed, exhaustion finally overwhelming adrenaline. She was brushing her teeth when she heard it. A soft electronic chime from downstairs, different from the normal security system tones. Then Darius's voice, sharp and controlled. Lena, stay upstairs. Her blood turned to ice. She crept to the top of the stairs, heart hammering, and peered down. Darius stood in the living room, his pistol drawn, eyes on the security monitor showing the cameras positioned around the house. On the screen, Lena could see a figure moving through the backyard, testing the workshop door, then circling toward the house. He's here, Darius said into his phone, presumably to Tom. One suspect armed. I can see the weapon profile, east side of the property. A pause. Copy that. 5 minutes. I'll keep him outside. The figure on the monitor reached the back door, tried the handle, found it locked. Then, with deliberate malice, he pulled something from his jacket. Lena couldn't see what, and smashed the small window beside the doorframe. The security alarm shrieked to life, and everything happened very, very fast. Darius moved with the kind of speed that came from muscle memory, etched so deep it bypassed conscious thought. Glass tinkled to the floor. Rosie's... Lena started automatically, then caught herself, mind scrambling. Naya's room. Now, Darius said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Lock the door, move her bed against it, and get in the closet with her. If anyone comes through that door who isn't me or Tom Hayward, you use what I taught you. Understand? Lena nodded, her face pale but her eyes clear. She was terrified, but she wasn't frozen. And Darius felt a flash of fierce pride in her even as he moved to intercept the threat. Lena ran upstairs while Darius positioned himself in the kitchen doorway, giving himself clear sight lines to the back door while maintaining cover. The alarm was still shrieking, loud enough to wake Nia, loud enough to alert the neighbors, loud enough to tell the intruder he'd lost the element of surprise. Good. Darius wanted him rattled. Through the shattered window, he could see a hand reaching for the deadbolt, trying to unlock it from inside. Darius's pistol tracked the movement, steady, waiting. The lock clicked open and the door swung inward. And Derek Cole stepped into Darius Carter's kitchen like he owned the place. He was maybe 40, lean and hard, with the predatory awareness of someone who'd done this kind of work professionally. He had a pistol in his right hand, suppressor attached, and his eyes swept the room with tactical precision before settling on Darius. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, two men who'd operated in similar worlds, recognizing each other across the distance. Darius Carter, Cole said, his voice surprisingly mild. Former Marine Force Recon, couple of classified deployments in the sandbox. Impressive record. Shame you went soft. You've got 3 seconds to turn around and walk out, Darius replied, his aim never wavering. Take them or don't. But understand that if you don't, this ends badly for you. Cole smiled. I'm getting paid a lot of money to deliver a message. The woman upstairs needs to understand that Marcus Vance doesn't forget. She cost him everything, and now she's going to pay. She's under my protection, Darius said. That means she's off limits. Is she worth dying for? Because that's what this becomes if you don't step aside. Darius's finger rested lightly on the trigger, his stance solid, every part of him ready. I've died for less important things, he said. Try me. The standoff held for 3 heartbeats. Upstairs, Lena would be moving Nia, getting her to safety, doing exactly what Darius had told her to do. Outside, sirens were starting to wail in the distance, Tom and his deputies responding to the alarm. Cole had maybe 2 minutes before this place was swarmed with law enforcement. He seemed to calculate the same math Darius did. This isn't over. Yeah, it is, Darius said. You're just too stupid to know it yet. Cole's eyes hardened and he moved. Not toward Darius, but sideways, trying to get an angle to the stairs. Darius fired. A single shot, precise, hitting the doorframe 6 in from Cole's head. The suppressed weapon in Cole's hand coughed twice in response, bullets punching into the wall behind where Darius had been before he rolled. He came up in a new position, fired again. This round caught Cole in the shoulder, spinning him, and he went down hard behind the kitchen island. Darius advanced, methodical, his training running the show now. Clear the angles, maintain cover. Don't give the target time to recover or reposition. Cole was wounded, but not out. He came up firing wild shots that weren't aimed so much as desperate. Darius felt one tug at his sleeve before he put 2 rounds center mass. Cole's body armor caught both, but the impact drove him backward, slamming him against the cabinets. Before he could recover, Darius was on him, kicking the pistol away, putting Cole face down on the floor with his knee in the man's back and his gun to the base of his skull. Don't move, Darius said, voice low and lethal. Don't breathe wrong. Don't give me a reason. Cole groaned, the fight going out of him as the reality of his situation sank in. You shot me. Shoulder wound, through and through. You'll live to stand trial. Darius could hear the sirens getting closer, tires screeching to a stop outside. Federal charges, attempted murder, breaking and entering. You're looking at 20 years minimum. Marcus will get to her eventually, Cole rasped. You can't protect her forever. Don't need forever, Darius said. Just need long enough for people like you to figure out she's not worth the risk. He pulled zip ties from the tactical bag he'd stashed by the door, old habits, and secured Cole's wrists with professional efficiency. And now you get to be the object lesson. The front door burst open and Tom Hayward came through with 3 deputies, weapons drawn, eyes sweeping for threats. Darius didn't move, kept his position until Tom reached him and took over securing the suspect. You good? Tom asked, checking Cole for additional weapons. I'm fine. Lena and Nia are upstairs safe. He came in through the back, Darius added. I engaged. He went down. Tom looked at the broken window, the bullet holes in the walls, the blood on the kitchen floor, and side-eyed Darius. Darius, we're going to be doing paperwork for a week. Better paperwork than funerals. Fair point. Tom hauled Cole to his feet. The man swayed slightly from blood loss and shock. Derek Cole, you're under arrest for attempted murder, breaking and entering, and about 6 other felonies I'll think of on the way to the hospital. You have the right to remain silent. The Miranda warning faded into background noise as Darius holstered his weapon and headed for the stairs. His hands were steady, his breathing controlled, but underneath the professional calm, something was shaking loose. He'd fired his weapon, put a man down, returned to being exactly what he'd spent 2 years trying not to be. Nia's door was barricaded from inside just as he'd instructed. He knocked gently. Nia, baby, it's Dad. Everything's okay now. Can you open up? Sounds of furniture being moved. Then the door cracked open and Nia's face appeared, tear-streaked. Daddy, there was shooting. I know, baby. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Is the bad man gone? He's gone. The sheriff has him. The door opened fully and Nia launched herself at Darius, wrapping around him like a koala. He held her close, feeling her small body trembling against his chest. Over her head, he met Lena's eyes. She was standing in the closet doorway, the pistol he'd given her held correctly, safely, pointed at the floor. "You were right," she said quietly, "about giving myself options." Darius nodded, unable to speak around the tightness in his throat. He'd kept them safe. That's what mattered. But the cost of that safety was written in his daughter's tears and the smell of gunpowder hanging in the air. He carried Naya downstairs, Lena following, and found controlled chaos. Paramedics were working on Cole's shoulder while Tom supervised. Deputies were documenting the scene, taking photographs, marking bullet trajectories. Mrs. Chen had appeared from somewhere, wrapping a blanket around Nia and producing hot chocolate with the efficiency of someone who'd comforted traumatized children before. "You come stay with me tonight," she told Darius firmly. "All of you. This house is a crime scene, and that baby doesn't need to be sleeping where bullets flew." Darius wanted to argue but couldn't find the energy. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I'm going to lecture you about property values in the morning." Despite everything, Darius smiled. Tom pulled him aside while the paramedics loaded Cole into an ambulance. "Clean shoot, Darius. Textbook home defense. But there's going to be an investigation. You know the drill." "I know. And we need to talk about what Cole said, about Vance getting to Lena eventually. He was trying to scare us. Maybe." Tom glanced toward where Lena sat with Nia and Mrs. Chen, the three of them huddled together. But he was also right that we can't maintain this level of protection indefinitely. Tom's face hardened into duty. She needs to go back into federal protection. Formal witness security, new identity, the whole program. Darius's chest went tight. She won't want that. Doesn't matter what she wants, it matters what keeps her alive. "Let me talk to her. Make it soon," Tom warned. "Because after tonight, Vance is going to know his people failed and he's going to escalate." This was a warning shot. Next time won't be. They relocated to Mrs. Chen's house, a cozy bungalow 3 blocks over that smelled like jasmine tea and old books. The older woman set them up in her guest rooms with the matter-of-fact kindness of someone who'd seen enough of life's hardness to meet it with softness whenever possible. Nia fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by fear and the adrenaline crash, curled up in a bed that Mrs. Chen promised had been her granddaughter's. Darius stayed with her until her breathing evened out, stroking her hair, promising silently that he'd never let danger touch her again, even as he knew that was a promise he might not be able to keep. When he came back downstairs, Lena was sitting at Mrs. Chen's kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. She looked up when he entered, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Is she okay?" "She's asleep. Kids are resilient, but this is gonna leave marks." Darius poured himself tea he didn't want and sat across from her. "You did good tonight," he told her. "Following instructions, keeping Nia safe. You were ready to defend her if it came to that." "I was terrified." "Being terrified and doing it anyway, that's the definition of courage." Lena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yo, you sound like a motivational poster." "I sound like someone who's done a lot of terrifying things and lived to talk about it." They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that follows violence, heavy with things unsaid. Finally, Lena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tom thinks I should go into witness protection. Real protection this time. New identity. Disappear completely." "He told you that?" He told me to think about it. Said we'd talk in the morning, but I could see it in his face. That's where this is heading." Darius wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she could stay, that he'd protect her, that they could figure this out together. But he'd spent enough years in security work to know the truth. Tonight had been one man caught off guard, making mistakes. Next time it would be professionals, people who learned from Cole's failure, and no amount of small-town protection could stand against a coordinated assault. "He's probably right," Darius said, hating the words even as he spoke them. "Marcus Vance has resources, connections, patience. He'll keep sending people until one of them succeeds. The only way to truly be safe is to become someone else, somewhere else." "I don't want to run again." "I know." I like it here," Lena said, and her voice cracked. "I like Maggie's and the farmer's market and Mrs. Chen's mothering. I like you and Nia. I like feeling like maybe I could belong somewhere again." Darius reached across the table and took her hand. "Lena, look at me. You do belong here. You belong with us. but belonging doesn't mean much if you're dead. So what? Lena's eyes filled. I just disappear, leave you and Nia and everyone behind, start over with a fake name in some city I've never heard of, spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. You spend the rest of your life alive. That's what matters. Tears spilled down her cheeks now, and she didn't bother wiping them away. This isn't fair. I did the right thing. I testified. I helped put a criminal away, and my reward is losing everything. No, Darius said, voice steady with something like grief. Your reward is getting to wake up tomorrow and the day after that, and every day following. Justice isn't fair, Lena. It's just necessary. She pulled her hand back, stood abruptly, paced to the window. Outside, Riverdale slept on, oblivious to the small tragedy playing out in Mrs. Chen's kitchen. What if I don't go? Lena asked. What if I stay and we figure out another way? There is no other way, Darius said. Not one that doesn't put you, me, and Nia at risk. He stood too, moved to stand behind her. I have a daughter who's already lost her mother. I won't let her lose anyone else because I was too selfish to do what's necessary. Is that what this is? Lena turned to face him, anger and grief warring in her expression. Selfishness? Wanting you to stay? Darius's eyes went distant for a moment, honest and pained. Wanting you to stay? Wanting to see where this goes between us. Wanting Nia to keep having you in her life. All of that puts my desires above your safety. He swallowed. That's the definition of selfish. And what about what I want? Lena demanded. Don't I get a say? Of course you do, he said. But I'm asking you to choose survival over comfort. Choose living over belonging. Because I've seen what happens when people make the other choice. And I've attended enough funerals to know that pride and stubbornness make terrible epitaphs. The fight went out of her then, replaced by exhausted acceptance. She sagged against him, and Darius caught her, held her while she cried into his shoulder, her tears soaking through his shirt. He stroked her hair and made promises he couldn't keep and hated himself for being right. Eventually, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. How long do I have? Tom will want to move you within 48 hours, get you to a federal facility, start the process. New background, new location, new everything. 2 days to say goodbye to a life I barely started living. I'm sorry. I know. She looked at him, really looked at him, memorizing his features like she was trying to burn them into permanent storage. Will you tell Nia? Lena asked softly. I don't think I can. I'll tell her, Darius said, voice rough. She'll be heartbroken, but she'll understand eventually. Will she hate me for leaving? She could never hate you, he said. She'll just miss you. We both will. Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and excused herself to the guest room Mrs. Chen had prepared. Darius stayed in the kitchen staring at nothing, trying to reconcile the fact that he'd just convinced the first person he'd cared about since Alicia's death to walk out of his life for her own protection. Mrs. Chen appeared from wherever she'd been tactfully giving them privacy. That girl loves you, you know. I know. And you love her. Darius didn't answer, which was answer enough. So why are you sending her away? Mrs. Chen asked. Because loving someone means wanting them alive more than wanting them close. The older woman studied him with eyes that had seen too much of the world's cruelty and survived anyway. You Marines and your noble sacrifices, she muttered. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't letting go. Sometimes it's holding on despite the risk. The risk isn't just to her, Darius said. It's to Nia, too. I can't gamble my daughter's safety on hope and stubbornness. Can't you? Mrs. Chen asked. Or won't you? She patted his shoulder. Sleep on it, Darius. Morning has a way of making things clearer. But morning brought only confirmation of the night's hard truths. Tom arrived early with coffee and federal paperwork. The FBI had been contacted. Witness protection was being expedited. There was a facility in Virginia where Lena could stay while her new identity was created. A safe house with round-the-clock security. She'll be gone by Friday, Tom said, spreading documents across Mrs. Chen's dining table. I'm sorry, Darius. I know this isn't what you wanted. What I want doesn't matter, Darius said. What keeps everyone safe matters. Nia took the news the way 6-year-olds do, with immediate, unfiltered devastation. Papa, why does she have to go? She cried. Can't she just stay here and be safe with us? Darius knelt to her level, brushing tears from her cheeks. The bad people who want to hurt her know she's here now. The only way to keep her really safe is for her to go somewhere they can't find her. But I'll miss her. Me too, baby. But sometimes missing someone is better than losing them forever. That doesn't make sense. I know. A lot of grown-up things don't make sense. Lena spent her last 2 days in Riverdale saying quiet goodbyes. Barb at Maggie's hugged her fiercely and promised to save her booth for when she came back, even though they both knew she wouldn't. The woman at the farmer's market who sold honey tucked an extra jar into Lena's bag and told her to remember the taste of Riverdale wherever she ended up. Sheriff Hayward shook her hand and thanked her for her courage, both in testifying and in making the hard choice to disappear. Thursday evening, her last night, Darius made dinner at his house, now cleared by investigators and put back together as much as bullet holes and broken windows allowed. Nia helped set the table with unusual solemnity, and they ate spaghetti like it was a funeral meal, conversation stilted and painful. After dinner, Nia asked Lena to read her a bedtime story. They curled up together in Nia's bed, the girl's small body tucked against Lena's side, and they made it through 3 pages before Nia interrupted. Will you forget about me? Lena's throat closed. Never, not ever. Promise. I promise. You're unforgettable, Nia Carter, Lena whispered, meaning it in her bones. You're unforgettable too. Nia was quiet for a moment, then asked with a child's brutal clarity, when my mom died, Daddy said she'd always be with us in our hearts. Does that work for people who are still alive, but go away? I think it works even better, Lena said softly, because I'm going to think about you every day and wonder how tall you're getting and what books you're reading and whether you finally learn to make those perfect pancakes your dad makes. I'll practice extra hard, Nia promised, so when you come back, I can make them for you. That sounds perfect. They finished the story and Lena tucked Nia in, kissed her forehead, and somehow made it out of the room before the tears started. Darius was waiting in the hallway and he pulled her into his arms without a word, just held her while she broke. I can't do this, she whispered. I can't leave her. Leave you. You have to. Why does doing the right thing always hurt so much? Because if it didn't hurt, Darius said, voice low, it wouldn't be worth doing. They went downstairs and sat on the porch in the October darkness, not touching but close enough to feel each other's warmth. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating them before moving on. Riverdale continued its quiet existence, unchanged by the small dramas of ordinary people trying to survive extraordinary circumstances. What will you tell her? Lena asked. When she asks about me, the truth, Darius said, that you were brave and kind and you chose to keep everyone safe by leaving, that you cared about her, about us, enough to make the hard choice. Will she understand? Someday, kids are more resilient than we give them credit for. I don't feel resilient. You don't have to feel it to be it. Darius turned to look at her, his face shadowed but his eyes catching moonlight. Lena, I need you to know something. These past weeks, having you in our lives, it woke something up in me that I thought died with Alicia, the possibility of connection, of building something new. He swallowed. I'm not saying I love you because that's not fair to either of us given the circumstances, but I could have, given time, given different circumstances. I could have too, Lena whispered. I think I was already halfway there. Then we'll just have to carry that possibility with us, Darius said, who we might have been if the world was kinder. They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, saying nothing because everything had already been said. Tomorrow, Lena would leave for Virginia for a new name and a new life. Tomorrow, Darius would return to being just a carpenter and a father. Tomorrow, Nia would wake up to a house that felt emptier than it had any right to. But tonight, they had the porch, and the darkness, and the knowledge that for a brief, shining moment, they'd almost been something more. Friday morning came too fast and too slow simultaneously. Lena's bag was packed. The federal transport was scheduled for 10 a.m., and Mrs. Chen had provided enough baked goods for the entire witness protection facility. Nia clung to Lena one last time, extracting promises that Lena would think of her, remember her, somehow find a way to let them know she was okay. I'll find a way, Lena promised, not knowing if it was possible, but making the promise anyway, because that's what you did for children you loved. Darius walked her to the unmarked car where 2 federal agents waited with professional courtesy and complete disinterest in the emotional devastation happening around them. He didn't hug her, that would have made it worse. But he did take her hand, squeezed once, and spoke so quietly only she could hear. Stay safe. Stay alive. And Lena, don't forget that you're stronger than you think. You survived Chicago. Survived Marcus Vance. Survived having 2 men try to kill you. You'll survive this too. I don't want to just survive anymore, Lena whispered. I want to live. Then live, Darius said. Wherever you end up, whatever name they give you, find a way to live, not just exist. Promise me that. I promise. She got in the car, buckled her seatbelt, and forced herself not to look back as they pulled away from the blue house on Oak Street. Forced herself not to watch Darius and Naya getting smaller in the rear window, not to memorize the sight of them standing together on the porch she'd helped paint weeks ago. The car turned the corner and Riverdale disappeared from view. In the back seat, clutching her bag and Mrs. Chen's cookies, Lena allowed herself exactly 5 minutes of crying. Then she wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and started the process of becoming someone else entirely. The federal safe house in Virginia was exactly what Lena expected. Sterile, secure, and utterly devoid of personality. Beige walls, industrial carpeting, furniture that looked like it had been ordered in bulk from a government catalog. Her room had a bed, a dresser, and a window that overlooked a parking lot surrounded by chain-link fence. The agents who processed her intake were professional and distant, explaining protocols and restrictions with the enthusiasm of people reading from a script they'd memorized years ago. She was given a temporary identity. Sarah Mitchell, graphic designer from Portland, and told her permanent placement would be determined within 2 weeks. They took her phone, her laptop, anything that could be traced back to her real life. Communication with anyone from her past was forbidden. She was, for all intents and purposes, erased. The first week crawled by in a haze of interviews, psychological evaluations, and bureaucratic paperwork. Federal prosecutors wanted her testimony again, this time against the broader organization Marcus Vance had operated. They showed her photographs of men she'd never seen, asked about conversations she'd never had, pushed for details that didn't exist. She answered honestly, watched their disappointment when she couldn't give them what they wanted, and returned to her beige room feeling like a failure. At night, she dreamed of Nia's laughter and Darius's steady presence. Woke up reaching for connections that no longer existed. On day 9, a different agent appeared during her morning coffee. Older, sharp-eyed, carrying herself with the authority of someone who'd climbed the FBI hierarchy through competence rather than politics. She introduced herself as Assistant Director Karen Walsh and asked if they could speak privately. They sat in a small conference room, door closed, and Walsh laid out a file between them. Lena Harper, Walsh said, voice matter-of-fact, reciting Lena's life like a grocery list. Formerly Elena Castigliano, born in Philadelphia, graduated top of her class from Cornell's architecture program, built a successful design firm in Chicago before testifying against Marcus Vance. Lena's jaw tightened. I know my own history. Do you know that 3 days ago Marcus Vance was found dead in his cell? Lena's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. What? Apparent suicide. Hanged himself with a bedsheet during morning count. Walsh's expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp, watching Lena's reaction. Convenient timing, given that his organization has been scrambling to eliminate witnesses and tie up loose ends. You think he was murdered? No, I think Marcus Vance was a narcissist who believed he'd eventually beat the charges and walk free. Suicide doesn't fit his profile. Walsh leaned back slightly. But the official ruling stands, and with his death, something interesting happened. Walsh pulled a document from the file and slid it across the table. Lena recognized legal letterhead, dense paragraphs of text that her exhausted brain couldn't immediately parse. Vance's organization is collapsing, Walsh said. Without him at the center, the power structure fragmented. His lieutenants are turning on each other, cutting deals with prosecutors, providing evidence in exchange for reduced sentences. Walsh's finger tapped the page. The man who ordered the attempts on your life, Derek Cole's handler, was arrested yesterday in Miami. He's cooperating fully, naming names, burning bridges. By the end of the month, there won't be an organization left to threaten you. Lena read the document slowly, her hands starting to shake. What are you saying? I'm saying the threat is over, Walsh said. Marcus Vance is dead. His organization is dead, and the people who wanted you silenced are either in custody or trying very hard to pretend they never heard your name. You're no longer a target. So I can go home. Walsh hesitated, and Lena's heart sank. It's not that simple. You were processed into witness protection. There are protocols, procedures, and while the immediate threat has been neutralized, there's always the possibility that someone years from now might decide to settle old scores. But you just said... I said the organization is collapsing, Walsh cut in, calm. I didn't say every individual who worked for Vance is accounted for. There are always loose ends in cases like this. Walsh leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. Here's what I can offer you. We can complete your placement in the program. New city, new identity, new life. Or we can release you from protective custody with the understanding that while the risk is minimal, it's not zero. You'd be free to return to your previous life, but you'd be doing so without federal protection. What would you do, Lena asked, if you were me? Walsh didn't flinch. Honestly, I'd take the risk. The chances of someone coming after you now are vanishingly small and getting smaller every day as more and more people flip. But I've been doing this job for 20 years and I've learned there's no such thing as absolute safety. All we can do is make informed choices and live with the consequences. Lena thought about the beige room, the temporary identity, the prospect of spending the rest of her life as someone else in a city chosen by bureaucrats. Then she thought about Nia's gap-toothed smile and Darius's careful hands building furniture and Maggie's diner on Saturday mornings. I want to go home to Riverdale, Lena said. To Riverdale, Walsh repeated and nodded like she'd expected this answer. I'll start the paperwork. It'll take a few days to process you out of the system. Coordinate with local law enforcement in Pennsylvania. Sheriff Hayward will need to be briefed and will maintain a monitoring protocol for at least 6 months, periodic check-ins, threat assessment updates, that kind of thing. Walsh slid a card across the table. You'll have a direct line to our field office if anything concerning comes up. Lena's throat tightened. But I can go back. You can go back, Walsh confirmed. Though I should warn you, the people you left behind think you're gone for good. Walking back into their lives is going to be complicated. I know, Lena said, voice steady with something like certainty. But complicated is better than empty. 3 days later, Lena stood in front of a mirror in the federal facilities processing room, looking at herself in civilian clothes for the first time in almost 2 weeks. Her reflection showed someone thinner than she remembered, older around the eyes, but still recognizably herself. Still Lena Harper, architect and survivor, woman who'd chosen truth over comfort and was still standing despite everything. An agent drove her to the nearest bus station with an envelope containing cash, her returned identification, and a phone number for the FBI field office in Pittsburgh. Good luck, Miss Harper, the agent said. Try to stay out of trouble. I'll do my best. The bus ride to Riverdale took 4 hours, every mile feeling simultaneously too long and too short. Lena rehearsed what she'd say to Darius, to Nia, to Sheriff Hayward, discarded every version as inadequate. How did you explain that you'd walked away to keep them safe and then come back because the danger had evaporated like morning fog? How did you ask for forgiveness for leaving when leaving had been the right choice at the time? The bus pulled into Riverdale's small station just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday. The October air had turned colder, November approaching with the promise of winter. Leaves covered the sidewalks in drifts of rust and gold, and the town looked exactly as she'd left it, unchanged, indifferent to her small drama, simply existing in its quiet way. Lena's first stop was the sheriff's office. Tom Hayward looked up from his desk when she walked in, and his expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and finally, cautious relief. Lena Harper, he said. They told me you were coming back, but I didn't quite believe it. Assistant Director Walsh called you this morning, Tom went on. Gave me the full briefing. Vance's death, the organization's collapse, your release from protection. He gestured to a chair. Sit down. Tell me you know what you're doing. Lena sat, suddenly exhausted. I know I couldn't stay away, she said. Is that close enough? Tom exhaled. Close enough. He leaned back, studying her. Darius doesn't know you're back. I wasn't sure if I should call him, Tom admitted, or let you do it yourself. How is he? Quiet, Tom said. Quieter than usual, which is saying something. He finished the bookshelf for the library, took on a few more carpentry jobs, keeps to himself mostly. Tom's gaze softened. Nia asked about you every day for the first week, then gradually stopped. Kids adapt, but it leaves marks. Guilt twisted in Lena's chest. I didn't want to leave them. I know, Tom said, and I stand by my advice. At the time, it was the right call, but circumstances changed, and now you're here. He tapped the desk lightly. And the question is, what happens next? I go see them, Lena said. I explain. I hope they understand. And if they don't? Lena didn't have an answer for that. She left the sheriff's office and walked toward Oak Street, her duffel bag heavy on her shoulder, her heart heavier still. The blue house came into view, the maple tree's branches now mostly bare, and Lena stopped at the end of the driveway. Suddenly terrified. The front door was closed, no signs of activity. Darius's truck sat in the driveway. From the backyard, she could hear the faint sound of hammering, rhythmic, steady. The sound of someone working through something with their hands because they couldn't work through it any other way. Lena forced herself to move. She walked around the side of the house to the workshop, its door propped open. And there he was. Darius stood at the workbench, driving nails into a frame with focused intensity. Sawdust in his hair, sweat on his shirt despite the cold. He looked thinner too, worn down by the same 2 weeks that had hollowed her out. He didn't notice her at first, too absorbed in his work. And Lena had a moment to just watch him. This black man who'd protected her, cared for her, let her go because it was the right thing to do. Carrying the weight of it in his shoulders like he'd always carried more than his share. Then he sensed her presence the way people with his training always did. He looked up and the hammer slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor. Lena, her name in his voice, rough with disbelief and something that might have been hope, nearly broke her. Hi. You're here. He swallowed. You're not supposed to be here. I know, things changed. She stepped into the workshop, setting down her bag. Marcus Vance is dead. His organization collapsed. The FBI cleared me to come back. Darius just stared at her, processing, his hands gripping the edge of the workbench like it was the only thing keeping him upright. When? 3 days ago. I came back as soon as they processed me out. You could have called. I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me, Lena said. If Naya would. I left Darius. I walked away. You didn't walk away. His voice tightened. I sent you away. We sent you away to keep you alive. He rounded the workbench, closing the distance between them. Don't you dare feel guilty for surviving. I feel guilty for hurting Naya, Lena whispered. For hurting you. We were already hurting, Darius said. At least this way you're alive to apologize for it. He stopped just short of touching her, his hands hovering like he wasn't sure he was allowed. Are you really safe? He asked. No more threats, no more looking over your shoulder. The FBI says the risk is minimal, Lena said. Not zero, but close enough that they're comfortable with me being out of protection. Close enough, Darius repeated softly. I've built a life on close enough. I can work with close enough. He looked at her like he was trying not to hope. Can you work with me walking back into your life after leaving? Lena asked. Can Nia? Before he could answer, a small voice came from the workshop doorway. Lena! They both turned. Nia stood there in her school clothes, her backpack still on, her face cycling through confusion and hope and something too complicated for a 6-year-old to fully understand. Hi, sweetheart, Lena said, her voice breaking. Nia didn't move. Mrs. Chen said you had to go far away and couldn't come back, she said. She said you were keeping us safe by being gone. That was true, Lena whispered. But things changed, and now it's safe for me to be here again. If you want me to be. Nia's chin trembled. Do you promise you won't leave again? It was the hardest question Lena had ever been asked. She wanted to promise, wanted to give this child the certainty she deserved. But she'd learned the hard way that promises made in good faith could still be broken by circumstances beyond anyone's control. I promise I'll try my very hardest to stay, Lena said carefully. I can't promise that nothing will ever happen that might take me away because life is unpredictable and sometimes hard. But I can promise that if I'm here, it's because I choose to be. Because I want to be with you and your dad. Is that enough? Nia considered this with the solemn intensity of childhood, weighing honesty against hope. Then she dropped her backpack and ran, launching herself at Lena with the full force of 6-year-old emotion. Lena caught her, held her, and felt something in her chest that had been clenched tight for 2 weeks. Finally release. "I missed you so much," Nia said into Lena's shoulder. "I tried to be brave like Daddy said, but I missed you." "I missed you too," Lena whispered. "Every single day." Darius watched them, his expression unguarded for once, and Lena saw everything he'd been holding back written across his face. Relief and fear and careful, fragile hope. That evening they had dinner at the kitchen table where Lena had eaten so many meals before, the three of them finding their rhythm again. Nia talked nonstop, filling Lena in on everything she'd missed. The Tooth Fairy's inflation adjustments, progress on her reading, the fact that she'd finally mastered the perfect pancake flip. "You have to stay for pancakes on Saturday," Nia insisted. "You have to see my technique." "I wouldn't miss it for anything." After dinner, after Nia was reluctantly convinced to go to bed, Darius and Lena found themselves back on the porch in the November cold, bundled in jackets, occupying the same space they'd sat in when she'd said goodbye. "I meant what I said before," Darius said quietly, "about having feelings for you, about the possibility of what we could have been." "Past tense," Lena teased through the ache in her throat. "No," Darius said, "present continuous. Those feelings didn't go away just because you did. If anything, they got stronger, which is inconvenient and terrifying and not something I was looking for." Lena turned to look at him, her breath misting in the cold air. "I fell in love with you somewhere between the diner and the shooting range," she said. "Probably actually at the farmer's market when Nia was explaining honey varieties, but I didn't admit it to myself until I was in that federal safe house, missing everything about this life." "That's extremely inconvenient timing," Darius murmured. "The worst. What do we do about it?" I don't know," Lena admitted. "I've never been good at this part. The part where you're supposed to be vulnerable and open and trust that the other person won't destroy you." Darius reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm despite the cold. "How about we start small," he said. "Dinner tomorrow night, just the two of us. Mrs. Chen already offered to watch Nia. And apparently half of Riverdale has been waiting for me to get my act together where you're concerned." "Barb at Maggie's?" Lena asked, startled. Darius sighed. "Barb has a wedding Pinterest board. I'm not even joking." Lena laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuineness. "Dinner sounds perfect." "But Darius," she said, voice softening, "I need you to know I'm still figuring out who I am after everything that happened. The trial, the threats, becoming someone else for 2 weeks. I'm a little bit broken right now." "Good thing I specialize in fixing broken things," Darius said, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure it out together. No pressure, no expectations beyond showing up and being honest." Lena smiled through the ache. "How does that sound?" "Like the best offer I've had in a long time." They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, hands linked, breathing synchronized. And for the first time since leaving Chicago, Lena felt like maybe she'd finally found what she'd been looking for all along. Not safety guaranteed, not security promised, but the possibility of building something real with someone who understood that strength and vulnerability weren't opposites, but partners. The next morning, Lena woke early in Darius's guest room to the sound of small feet running down the hallway. Nia burst through the door with the energy of a child on a mission. "Lena, you're still here. I thought maybe I dreamed you." "I'm really here," Lena said, smiling. "Good. Because I made you something, and if you were a dream, I'd be really sad." Nia thrust out a piece of construction paper, slightly crumpled from enthusiastic carrying. Lena took it carefully and felt her breath catch. It was a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands labeled in careful first-grade handwriting, Daddy, me, and Lena. Above them, in rainbow letters, our family. "I drew this before you left," Nia explained. "I was going to give it to you, but then you had to go away. Mrs. Chen said I should keep it to remember you, but now you're back, so you should have it." Lena stared at the gift, this declaration of belonging from a child who'd already lost too much, and tears spilled over. "Nia," she whispered, "this is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me." "Really? Really? Can I keep it forever?" "Oh, you have to," Nia said, beaming. "It's a family portrait." Darius appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day, and took in the scene. Lena crying over a child's drawing, Nia glowing with pride. His expression softened into something so tender it was almost painful to witness. "Nia, go get ready for school," he said gently. "Bus comes in 30 minutes. But I want to stay with Lena." "Lena will be here when you get home," Darius promised. "I promise." Nia ran off to get dressed, leaving the adults alone. Darius sat on the edge of the bed, studying the drawing Lena still clutched like a lifeline. "She drew that the week you were here," he said quietly, "before everything went sideways. I found it on her desk after you left, and I almost threw it away because it hurt too much to look at. But I couldn't do it. Kept it in a drawer instead, just in case." "Just in case what?" "Just in case miracles happened," Darius said, voice rough, "and you came back." Lena held up the drawing, the simple stick figures that somehow captured everything important. "She labeled us as a family." "She's 6, Darius said. "She calls it like she sees it." Lena's breath caught. "Is that what we are? What we could be?" Darius took the drawing, set it carefully on the nightstand, then took both of Lena's hands in his. "I think we could be whatever we choose to build," he said. "I've spent 2 years being just a single dad, keeping my world small and controlled because that felt safe. But safe is lonely, and I'm tired of lonely." He swallowed, eyes shining. "Naya's tired of it too, even if she doesn't have the words to say so." Lena's voice was steady with something fierce. "I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of starting over in places that don't feel like home." "Then stay," Darius said. "Not in the guest room, not as a temporary arrangement until you figure out your next move. Stay and see if maybe Riverdale could be home. See if maybe we could be the family Nia already thinks we are." It was too fast, too soon, too much after everything they'd been through. Lena knew this logically, knew healthy relationships were supposed to develop slowly with careful boundaries and measured steps. But she'd also learned life was short and uncertain, that tomorrow wasn't guaranteed, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was say yes to the possibility of joy, even when fear told you to protect yourself. "Okay," she said, "I'll stay." The kiss that followed was gentle and tentative, both of them learning the shape of this new thing between them. But it felt like coming home in a way that had nothing to do with places and everything to do with people. Over the next weeks, Lena settled into Riverdale life with the permanence she'd been afraid to claim before. She rented a small office space on Main Street and began rebuilding her architecture practice, starting with local projects: a renovation for the library, a community center redesign, small residential jobs that let her reconnect with the work she loved. Word spread that she was back, and the town responded with the matter-of-fact acceptance of people who'd already decided she belonged. Barb at Maggie's had her booth waiting every Saturday morning. The honey vendor at the farmer's market gave her a standing discount. Mrs. Chen continued to provide unsolicited advice and excellent baked goods. And Sheriff Hayward checked in weekly to confirm that the FBI's threat assessment remained unchanged. Minimal risk, no new developments, life returning to normal. Dinners at Darius's house became routine, then expected, then essential. Lena found herself keeping a toothbrush in his bathroom, clothes in his closet, sketches spread across his kitchen table. Nia started calling her Lena with the casual possessiveness of someone who decided they were keeping her. The town gossips had a field day, of course. Small towns ran on speculation and well-meaning nosiness, and the story of the woman who'd left under federal protection and come back to the quiet carpenter was too good not to discuss. But the gossip was kind, supportive. The collective consensus being that Darius deserved happiness, Nia deserved a mother figure, and Lena had proven herself through adversity. 3 months after Lena's return, on a February morning when snow covered Riverdale like a clean slate, she woke in Darius's bed. Not the guest room, but his room, the space he'd shared with Alicia and then kept sacred for years, and realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt afraid. Darius was already awake, watching her with the quiet contentment of a man who'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Morning," he said softly. "Morning. You're staring." "I'm appreciating there's a difference." Lena stretched, taking in the room that had become familiar, photographs of Alicia still on the dresser, because grief didn't disappear just because new love appeared. Darius's careful organization evident in every drawer and closet. Morning light slanting through curtains Nia had helped pick out. "I've been thinking," Lena said. "That's a dangerous habit." I want to make this official. Not marriage, not yet. But something. Move in properly, not just gradually accumulating belongings. Be a real part of Nia's life. Help with school and homework and the million tiny decisions that come with raising a kid. Build something intentional instead of just letting it happen by accident. Darius propped himself up on one elbow, expression serious. You understand what you're signing up for? He asked. It's not just me and good intentions. It's a grieving 6-year-old who has abandonment issues and asks about her mom at the most inconvenient times. It's small town life where everyone knows your business. It's me with all my baggage from the Marines and Alicia's death and the constant low-level fear that I'm going to fail at this single dad thing. I understand, Lena said, and I'm saying I want it anyway, all of it. The complicated parts and the hard parts and the parts that don't fit into neat categories. Why? Because for the first time in my life, Lena whispered, I'm not running from something. I'm running towards something. Toward you and Nia and the possibility of building a life that isn't defined by fear or trauma or what I've lost. I'm choosing this, Darius. I'm choosing you. He kissed her, slow and thorough, and when they finally broke apart, he was smiling in that rare, unguarded way that made him look years younger. Then I guess we should probably tell Nia she's getting what she's been asking for since you showed up. They told her at breakfast, sitting around the kitchen table with pancakes and orange juice. Nia's response was immediate and practical. She leapt from her chair, pumped her fist in the air, and shouted, I knew it! Loud enough to probably wake the neighbors. You knew what? Darius asked, amused. That Lena was staying forever, Nia declared. I told Emma at school, and she didn't believe me, but I was right. She ran to Lena and hugged her fiercely. You're going to live here in our house if that's okay with you. It's the best. Can I help you move your stuff? Can we paint your room? Can we... Nia, breathe, Darius said, laughing. We have time to figure out all the details. But Nia was already planning, her 6-year-old mind racing ahead to all the possibilities. Lena caught Darius's eye across the table. He smiled, shook his head in fond exasperation, and mouthed, Welcome to the family. The official moving in happened over the course of 2 weeks, mostly because Lena didn't have much to move. Her Chicago belongings were still in storage, and her Riverdale studio had been temporary by design. But Darius turned the guest room into a proper office for her, built custom shelves for her architecture books, created a workspace where she could sketch and design with natural light pouring through windows he enlarged specifically for that purpose. Nia helped paint the walls a soft gray that Lena had chosen, getting more paint on herself than the wall, but approaching the task with such enthusiasm that nobody had the heart to correct her technique. Mrs. Chen provided furniture from her granddaughter's old room. A desk, a filing cabinet, decorative touches that made the space feel lived in. The first night Lena officially lived there, all her belongings properly integrated into the house's rhythms, they had a quiet dinner followed by a living room movie night. Nia fell asleep halfway through, curled between them on the couch, and Darius carefully carried her upstairs while Lena cleaned up the popcorn bowls. When he came back down, she was standing at the kitchen window, looking out at the backyard where snow glowed blue in the moonlight. You okay? Darius asked. I'm perfect, he exhaled. I'm terrified. Terrified of what? That I'm going to wake up and this will have been a dream. That something will happen to take it away. That I don't deserve this much happiness after everything. Darius came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on her shoulder. You deserve everything good that happens to you, he said. And if anything tries to take this away, it's going to have to go through me first. Lena smiled into the warmth of him. And I'm much harder to get through than I look. You look pretty formidable. Exactly my point. They stood like that for a while, watching the snow fall in fat, lazy flakes, adding to the blanket of white that covered everything. Somewhere in the house, the heater kicked on. A clock ticked. Nia's white noise machine hummed from upstairs. All the small sounds of a home being lived in, being loved in. Darius, Lena said softly. Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on the possibility of this, for staying open to letting someone in even when it was easier to stay closed off. Darius kissed her temple. Thank you for coming back, he said, for choosing us when you could have chosen safety somewhere else. "This is safety," Lena whispered. "You and Nia, this is the safest I've ever felt." Spring came to Riverdale with the explosive green of new life, and with it came the final chapter of Marcus Vance's story. The federal prosecutor called Lena personally to inform her that the last of Vance's organization had been dismantled. The final lieutenant sentenced, every loose end tied off. The case was closed. She was free. Not just legally, but in every sense that mattered. "You did good, Miss Harper," the prosecutor said. "Your testimony started the dominoes falling, and we couldn't have built the case without your courage." After she hung up, Lena sat in her office for a long time, processing the fact that it was truly over. The fear, the vigilance, the looking over her shoulder, all of it could finally be put to rest. That evening, she told Darius and Nia over dinner. Nia's response was immediate and practical. "Does this mean we can go on vacation?" she asked. "Emma went to Disney World and said it was amazing." Darius looked at Lena, a question in his eyes. "Does this mean what I think it means?" "It means I'm free," Lena said. "Completely, totally free to live my life however I want." "And how do you want to live it?" Darius asked quietly. Lena looked around the kitchen table, at Nia building towers with her green beans, at Darius with sawdust still in his hair from a day in the workshop, at the life they'd constructed from broken pieces and stubborn hope, and felt certainty settle in her bones. "Exactly like this," Lena said. "Here with you two, building something that lasts." 6 months later, on a Saturday morning at Maggie's Diner, Lena sat in their usual booth with Darius and Nia. Barb poured coffee without being asked, complimented Nia's new haircut, and announced that Frank was in an excellent mood, so the pancakes would be perfect. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating dust motes and the faces of people Lena had come to love. The town moved around them with comfortable familiarity. Farmers discussing crops, retirees arguing about politics, young families wrangling children through breakfast. Nia was demonstrating her pancake flipping technique, which had improved dramatically, but still resulted in one pancake landing on the floor to general laughter. Darius was reading the local paper, his hand resting casually on Lena's knee under the table, and the simple domesticity of it made her throat tight with gratitude. This was what she'd been looking for when she left Chicago. Not an escape from fear, but a place to build something worth protecting. Not safety guaranteed, but safety earned through showing up, through choosing love over caution, through believing that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stay. Darius looked up from his paper and caught her watching him. "What?" "Nothing," Lena said, smiling. "Everything. I'm just happy." He smiled, the real smile she'd learned was reserved for Nia and her, and quiet Saturday mornings when the world felt right. "Good," he said. "You deserve to be happy." Nia abandoned her pancakes to grab both of their hands, stacking hers on top like she used to do, creating their small family connection in the middle of Maggie's Diner while the town buzzed around them. "I love you both," she announced with the unself-conscious honesty of childhood. "You're my favorite people in the whole world." "We love you too, sweetheart," Darius said, his voice rough with emotion. Lena squeezed Nia's hand, then reached for Darius's free hand, completing the circuit. "My favorite people too." They sat like that for a moment. 3 people who'd found each other through chaos and violence and federal protection, who'd chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. And in that moment, everything felt possible. Outside, Riverdale continued its quiet existence. Inside Maggie's Diner, a family sat together in the morning light, holding hands and eating pancakes, and understanding finally that home wasn't a place you found, but something you built with the people brave enough to stay. The threats were over, the fear had lifted, and what remained was simpler and more profound than anything Lena had expected when she first walked into this diner months ago, looking for a fresh start. What remained was love and belonging and the fierce determination to protect this ordinary, extraordinary life they'd created together. What remained was